Welcome, dear viewer, to Thinking Cup, a talk show that comes to you from Hope Channel Kenya, the TV station that brings light in your family. And with me is Anthony Kamau from the University of Eastern Africa, Baraton. He is the ICT manager here. Welcome, my guest.
Thank you.
Tony, I have a couple of questions. I want us to discuss about something with information management or knowledge management, really, knowledge management. What is the sense and status of knowledge management in Kenya, and if you want, Africa?
Thank you very much for that question. And the topic of knowledge management is quite recent. And today you've had, many countries, developing countries and developed countries where people are talking about knowledge management and knowledge-based economy. And the whole idea is that you have an economy that is based on people having information and being able to use that information to inform their decision making.
So that then leads me to wonder whether we are at the level where we have three things. One, data collection in terms of the uptake knowledge or generation of knowledge. And then you want to tell me something about its management before we are able then to do the decision or execution of the information we have. Let's begin with gathering processes. Where are we?
Yes.
Do we have systems? Do we have institutions? Do we have the human capital to do that?
If you look at it from a historical perspective, the challenge that we've had in regards to knowledge management is first being able to gather credible data. Now, the first challenge that you've had, especially from developing countries, is the fact that even access to devices is a problem. You've got infrastructure that is not developed. So you've got countries where there is no electricity. So even if you had devices, again, how do they get powered? So that has been one of the challenges that we've had. But to a good degree right now, we see that many areas and many countries, right now we've got distribution of power that is almost going to the villages. Like, for example, here in Kenya, the government has a program that is taking electricity to the villages.
Rural electrification, that is it?
Exactly. And also to the schools through their digital learning program. And so right now things are improving. And so what now we need to move forward to is the ability to now use those devices to collect data. And when I talk about data, I'm talking about being able to get, let's say, for example, you're looking at an individual. What exactly do they do? What do they buy, like, for example, in a supermarket? And so if you're able to get the spending patterns of people, for example, if it is a supermarket, they could then be able to come up with a way that they are able to, develop marketing programs for that person. If you're talking of an institution, you can be able to look at the kind of people who come to an institution through that data gathering. And so once you have this data, then you can be able to move to the next stage, which is you process that data so that you get credible information that can inform your decision making.
Let me just go back to data gathering. To the extent that we have not yet had a fairly well-developed or distributed electrification around the continent, and in particular in Kenya, and some places we still know that we don't have power yet. Do we have a gap in terms of therefore being able to gather data using technology?
Yes, there is that gap, but again, as like I've said, I am glad that we are closing in that gap. And when you look right now at the number of people who've got access to electricity, it's quite high. Today, when you look at, like for example, the the distribution of mobile phone, like for example, the latest statistics by the Communication of Kenya, Communication Authority of Kenya, you find that there are so many people with mobile devices, and definitely those mobile devices get charged. So then you would have to say that the electricity is well distributed. And the fact
One would argue that it's one thing to have the devices like now you talk about, yes, cellular phones, but the human capital, my girl at 9 years old can't do anything with the mobile, but she can't gather data that's credible.
Now, this is, again, I think probably we need to look at data gathering from a different perspective. That it's not the one person trying to gather data. We are looking at gathering data when a user is using a gadget. Like for example, when I've got mobile phone, my mobile operator is able to know, like for example, how many calls do I make. In fact, they're even able to know, like for example, which areas I'm able to visit. So all that constitutes data gathering. And so, like for example, I've seen some banks where they give you some key holders. Actually, that key holder is powered, and that key holder is able to gather quite some data without you knowing. Well, sometimes you could talk about ethical issues towards that,
yes.
but the fact is that they are able to almost monitor what you do on a day-to-day basis, and based on that, they could be able to structure their promotion in such a way that it fits you so well that you'll not be able to say no.
But also you have some funny guys who could intrude my privacy using that.
Well, that is very true.
Is that an issue that I should worry myself about?
It is. And that's where, again, the government need to come out very strong. And fortunately, like for many government and here in Kenya, we've got the ICT policy, which has been adopted, and it's providing a framework within which all operators should be able to work within. In this case, issues of privacy and issues of protecting clients' data is regarded in high regard, and so that is an area of concern, and that's where the government again need to come out very strongly to try and protect people.
Because in terms of regulation around it.
Exactly.
What about that I need to protect my children from rogue users?
Yes, that is another area that is very critical, because unfortunately...
They can track my daughter.
Yes.
And I don't know where they can take her. She's only a few years old.
And the good thing is that just like they can be able to track her, you could also be able to track her. So and the whole point is that there is no one time that you'll ever have a situation where you're free from bad people, because bad people use whichever technology is there. And the question is, how can you be ahead of them? In this regard, how are you able to use the gadgets and the devices that, for example, your daughter will have to be able to track them? And yet, the other people, they come out to use it, but also, even if they use that, they can track her, you can track her, then you're better. And so you see that that then helps, that you cannot stop technology and development because bad people are going to use the same technology and development.
Are you saying that we can't be so scared? We can't be paranoid?
No. I don't think there is...
But as a parent, I should be. I'm very worried that my daughter will be snatched by some buffoon and take her wherever, who knows.
Well, I think it's a good... It's a good concern.
Is she vulnerable?
Because definitely for every parent, when it comes to your children, you would be concerned about. But the point that I'm trying to make here is the fact that you can't run away from technology. Right. Neither can you stop your children fully from using that technology. What I'm saying is that why don't you use it to your advantage? Why would you want to run away from it or probably hide your head in the sand and think that it's not going to affect you?
So you're saying that it's unstoppable?
Yes, it is. And so the more we embrace it, exactly, the more you embrace it, the better. And
is that what you're telling my client, my viewer?
Yes,
That they have to embrace technology, however the side shows that we have.
Yes, that they need to embrace technology, but more than that, be ahead of other people. Because the moment now you go and you go ahead of other people, especially the bad people, then you will always have an advantage other than them. But if, for example, you don't use technology, then what will happen is that you will always be at a loss.
Let's talk about management of knowledge.
Sure.
What are we talking about here?
Now, today, we've got tons and tons of data that is generated. That data is processed into information if you have got good systems. And so today we've got tons and tons of information. But the question is, what is the value of information if it doesn't help you to make the right decision? And so here what you're talking about in regards to management is the ability to manage the information that you process so that it helps you towards making the right decision.
I'm just looking at a villager in my daddy's place, and I'm just wondering, does she understand that there's lots of information hanging around their head and they need to manage it? How do you guys help them to understand that they need to tap into it? At least I know today they know there's oxygen around them. Do they know that there's information around their head?
No, actually, the funny thing is this. The person in the village, they actually know how to use information better than sometimes the people who think they know.
Oh.
This is how I want to.
You mean that?
This is how I want to illustrate it to you. Look like, for example, the betting companies that are doing all the things that they are doing. You find people in the village today who sit together and they are analyzing so many things. They know how to access that information. Whether you're talking about, comparing different teams and looking for different information, people out there, they're trying to use that. So I would say that the only challenge that we have right now, I could say, is probably that the fact that our education system sometimes, they are not training people to be able to naturally harness the information available. And so you have got a situation where most of our education institutions are stuck in the old way of teaching people, where you think that you can teach people knowledge. But of course today it's not possible because we've got, again, just like I've said, tons of information that is generated and it's available, freely available. And what you teach people today may be obsolete tomorrow.
Let me hear you correctly. You're saying you can't teach people knowledge.
Not in today's world.
So what do you do to them?
You teach them how to analyze information.
Is that something that people know out there? Analyzing in knowledge?
That is actually what is lacking because our education system is not teaching people how to analyze information so that they're able to make decisions. And that is actually a huge gap. And I want to say, when you look at Adventist education, that is how Adventist education was actually structured. The focus was not so much in teaching people things, but it was to develop a whole person who can actually be able to make good decision, because a person's ability to make decision is based on their character, it's based on their values, it's based on what they believe in. And so when you develop that whole person, what happens is that then when they have information, when they have access to information, then they are able to use it and make the right decision.
So what you're saying that we need to teach people how to analyze information.
Exactly.
And that's a core component of management.
Exactly.
What else is there?
So of course now, after you've been able to manage information so that you can be able to filter information and get to exactly what you want. For example, you want to know, let's say an institution like Baraton where I work, we would want to know of our students, how many are male versus female? Where do they come from? Which region do they come from? The moment then out of the management, because basically what then it will mean is that when you get these people, as you admit them, you'd have to capture these details from these people, their profiles. So now, when it comes to management, you could be able to filter and know these numbers. And this kind of figures and numbers and statistics can help to inform your decision making, because you could say that most of our students are female. And so what do we do about that? We probably need to take a certain decision towards that because of that information that you'll have gotten. And so that is to the aspect of management. But now again, let me say that after you're able to manage information so that you're able to filter and get exactly, the information that you want, the next level is now, how then do you use that information to make decisions?
Because decision making, seemingly to me, is a very subjective thing. People make decisions in this kind of economies based on preferences of their own, not objective empirical processes.
Exactly.
So is it because the first two levels of gathering and management are faulty, or it's the information is staring in their face, but it's proceed to make decisions anyhow, anyway?
It's very true, and it's a very sad thing because most of the challenges that we are facing as a church, as individuals, as a country, it is because our decisions are not based on credible information. And right now we need to make a strategic decision to invest in information systems so that we are able to process our information, manage it in such a way that we can be able to filter and get the right information that can help us to make the right decision.
Let me ask you, Tony, if you look at the students you handle in the university,
Yes.
you teach at the University of Eastern Africa, right?
Yes, I do.
You see them coming from high school. Do you think they are retooled to be analytical, therefore to make critical decisions in the right way?
Sadly, most of the students who come to the university, and also sadly, most of them who go through university today in our current education system, do not have analytical skills. And so there's a very big gap.
Is it a structural curriculum problem, or what is it?
Yes, it is. It's both structural and also from a human capacity. I think that we need to sort of build capacity for our teachers and also for our education institutions so that they start to focus or they shift focus from what I called the focus on teaching people information, but rather helping them to become analytical and people who can actually be able to use information to analyze it and make decisions.
Tony, let me just rehearse something here in terms of decision making vis-a-vis management. How does a student who has come from high school, for example, going to any university, who doesn't have analytical skills, suffer when you begin to expose him or invite, in fact demand, that he analyzes information?
Now, when it comes to, teaching students to be analytical, this is what happens, that the teachers and the faculty members, they are able to give the students, for example, the class notes before the class. The students are able to interact with those notes. When they go to class, they then do a discussion. Now, what happens is that the students will have internalized the notes, and therefore, when they are discussing, it will not just be a question of regurgitating what they have read, but then they will be able to put it into perspective based on their own backgrounds and all that. So that is how you teach, because again, analytical skills is not something, that is obsolete. Absolute, sorry. It is something that you learn every day.
But it can become obsolete, isn't it?
well, yes.
If you don't have them, if you're using 10 years ago skills,
yes,
it wouldn't work today.
Of course, then, because again, it's analytical, what it means is that if you use the wrong information, then, that analysis then may not be valid. Mm-hmm. Yes.
What happens to a student graduating from an institution also, has not learned analytical skills, went ahead and just regurgitated the notes that the teacher gave him, got his A's, got his first-class degree honors, and then he goes to the job market? What happens there?
There is always a big difference, and the employers always see that. And the unfortunate thing is that the employers then have to invest in training these people so that they start becoming analytical. And so that's why we are seeing the gap between our education system and the industry. That sometimes you find our education systems are bringing out people who are not fit for the industry, because if, for example, you have people graduating and they cannot be able to look at a set of information and be able to analyze it and make a decision for a company, then what value is there? In fact, why then would you want to employ someone who've gone to higher education if they're not able to analyze? Because if it's just a question of following orders, you would rather then even have people who've not gone to school.
Is it the case that the corporate setup, the top guy thinks, you guys just implement? Is that not the case?
Oh.
Why then do you need graduates who can analyze when the top guy is supposed and is paid for that?
Yeah, okay, so, and I think for me, in my own perspective, the way I look at it is that we must have a situation where the industry and the education sector come together to be able to, to bring this shift. And the way I look at it is this: the reason why education institutions concentrate on papers and the degree, it is because that's what the industry asks for. When you go for an interview, what are you asked for? You're asked for a paper. And until we get to a situation where but getting a job is not so much dependent on the paper that you present, that there is more value and probably points when you're being evaluated, given to your ability to analyze situations. If, for example, the industry goes that way, then the degrees and the papers will not have so much value like they have today. And so, of course, what will happen is that the universities also and education institutions will shift their focus towards also building people who do not only have the papers, but they can also be able to, analyze and be analytical and be able to, look at situations and come up with, new things.
Do we have a situation today talking about the economy that we have in East Africa? Let's use Kenya, for example. Do you feel that both the private sector and the public sector are at the point where they're in demand of analytical skills more than mere papers?
The reality on the ground proves and shows that there is that need. In Kenya, there is a window because we're currently reviewing the curriculum for our education system. And I think you've heard the proposals that have been made. And actually, the challenge right now is for all of us to be able to contribute to that curriculum. And so we've got a window, a window of opportunity for us to change some of those things that have been happening. But if that does not change, then probably we'll continue with the same kind of thing. And what you find, like for example today, in many corporate institutions, the people who get employed are not the people who necessarily got A's, but they're the people who are able to go beyond that they are able to analyze things, and more importantly, also be able to present it. Because again, it's one thing to know how to analyze, but also it's another thing to be able to present it to people and convince them. Because if you're not able to present the findings that you've got to people so that it can inform them and make them change on some things, what value does it add?
If you're the Minister of Education or the Minister of ICT, I believe there's some ministry like that in this country, the many kind of ministries we have around. Yes. What is it you will tweak around in terms of policy? What is it we need to do so we can have this uptake and analytical capacity quickly shifted towards? So,
of course, for me, I see the Ministry of Education playing a very big role. But I also like the model which the government has adopted, like, for example, the government of Kenya, where, like, for example, this digital literacy program, DLP, which, of course, many people are calling the laptop project. Basically...
the right phrase is not the laptop project.
Yes.
What is it? Just for my viewer.
It's a digital literacy program.
I just learned without paying school fees. Keep going.
Yes, so what I was saying is that the approach and the model with which the government has approached this is quite good, where you have got a sort of interministerial group that looks into it. And so in this kind of a program, you have got the Ministry of Energy, providing electricity. You've got the Ministry of Education providing curriculum, guidance. You've got the Ministry of ICT providing devices and consultants in terms of ICT. So when you have this kind of a group, then you're able to work together, and it is more multi-stakeholder, and therefore you're able to incorporate everyone.
We're going to short break. Tony here says that we need to shift from simply teaching knowledge to analyzing knowledge. I thought that's a huge statement he made. And he's saying also that we need to have from our curricula a paradigm shift, if you please. When we come back, because we're going on a short break, when we come back, we will be looking at ministries. That will be church ministries, I believe, and the uptake of technology and the management of the same, how it's impacting on church ministries. You don't want to go away, because this is an important topic for you in your church, in your home, for your children. And Tony, the man in charge of ICT at the University of Eastern Africa, Baraton, is right in studio to discuss this matter. Welcome back, dear viewer, to Thinking Cap, the talk show on Hope Channel Kenya, the TV station that brings light in the family. Thinking Cap is a talk show which helps you to think, helps you to appreciate information. It taps into scholars, professionals, and leading opinion leaders who bring solutions to society. And with me on this topic talk show is Tony Kamau, the ICT manager, University of Eastern Africa, Baraton. Tony, help me understand something. How is the church in Africa, in Kenya, in your village, I don't know, where I stay in my street, using technology? How is it also managing knowledge?
Now, let me say, when you look at church from a general point of view, we've got some churches that have really adopted the use of technology, right from presentations, from preparing sermons, to even reaching out to people. However, a majority of church entities, when you look at them, they have still not yet adopted technology. And again, just like I said earlier, I don't think it's going to be a choice, because when you look at all the church members being in social media, having all the social media accounts, then if the church does not use it, then most probably they will not be able to reach quite a majority of them.
Are you saying that you either use technology or you perish?
I think those are very good words to say.
But you see, I'm just looking at the small ministries in the streets, in the villages. Are they even aware that knowledge and technology are indispensable utilities for their ministries?
Most probably they may not have looked at them from a strategic point of view. But I do believe that they are aware, because again, today, when you look at many churches, different groups, so you're talking about the choir and different Bible study groups, they have opened things like WhatsApp groups where people are able to communicate with each other. But it's only that from a church organization point of view, you find that those technologies are not being used. But actually, the church members themselves, in carrying out their responsibilities from whichever area or department they could be from, they are actually using technology.
So at the organizational level, there's a default, but at the individual level, there is express articulation of the same. What do we do with the fear that, first of all, churches by their very nature and constitution are conservative? They are not predisposed towards uptake of technology. I think they're a bit suspicious, if you ask me. Yet, on the other hand, they need technology to do articulation of their missions.
Yes, I think that's a very good question, a very good point. And when we look back, technology, the use of technology, although it's been there, from a very long time ago, but the recent use of technology, a majority of people have always viewed it as, going with the trends. However, today, the use of technology is not an option. It's not a choice for organizations, whichever organizations they are. In this case, if you're talking about the churches, it's not a choice. And the reason is because technology, number one, helps you to cut down on your costs. Number two, technology helps you to reach people faster and easier. And so you will find that since, especially for church organizations where sometimes you don't have enough budget, then using technology definitely helps you to cut down on some of your costs, and also more importantly, you're able to reach more people. Can you imagine, like, for example, how many people we're reaching right now? The fact that we're using technology, how would it be just probably holding a crusade out there in an open air market? The number of people that you would reach vis-a-vis the number of people that you're reaching right now, you can see there's a significant difference. So for me, I don't see a choice you have to use it. The only thing is, be strategic about it so that you're able to reap the benefit.
Can I go to my church as a pastor and tell my church members, guys, brethren, let's use technology? They'll ask me, which biblical authority do I use to tell them? Because their thinking is in the last days. And that phrase is used, and then they fill in with all kinds of statements in the last days. These are the last days. How do I convince them from that kind of mindset? There will be increase of knowledge. And here you are, you're saying they have no choice.
Now, let me say, the bad approach would be to go and tell people to use technology for the sake of it without them knowing the value that it adds. In fact, in most cases, you don't tell people, let's use technology. You start to use it because of a certain value that you're going to derive as a church. For example, probably I want to imagine that probably the early church, people didn't even have books to write on. When books were invented, it was a new technology. Probably there could have been some people who resisted a bit. And so, of course, there's always some form of resistance to change, and particularly to technology, there will always be that kind of resistance. But again, when you talk about change management, it is a situation where you do not have necessarily to tell people that let's use this technology. You actually expose it to them and sometimes build their capacity. And by the time they're using it, sometimes they don't have to know, because using technology is not something that probably you could say that you want to look for a verse that supports that in the Bible, because it is a tool that helps you. It's the same thing as using a microphone. Would you really want to go to the Bible to look for a verse that supports why you should use the microphone?
Maybe you should talk about a cooking stick. Microphone is still huge technology.
Oh.
Cooking stick. You don't need to get a verse in the Bible to tell somebody, hey, use a cooking stick to do your cooking. But you know you need it.
Yes.
So is it the same case? Looking at the kids in the high schools, in churches, and even in you guys in the university,
yes,
as the pastor is on the podium doing the sermon, the students are with their phones. No one knows whether they are looking at their Bibles or they are on Facebook or they are on WhatsApp. How do you manage that?
No.
And it's a real fear, is it not?
It is. And the reason why those students actually are checking those things is because we have not followed them to where they are.
What are you saying is that they have gone ahead of us?
Exactly. For example, the reason why that child will go will use their phone to check Facebook and other social media sites is because there is no learning content on that phone. What about if, for example, as a child, I could easily be able to learn my mathematics through the phone? What about if I got a tablet? If through the tablet, that my dad has, as a child, I could easily be able to play a game that teaches me science. What happens? I don't have to worry what my kid will be doing with a tablet or with a phone, because we are able to meet them where they are. Today, the current child or student is exposed to technology. So when you put them to a probably 2 or 3 hours lecture, and these are people who are exposed to, being able to get information right where they are, sometimes I think you would understand when they find it, easier to check their Facebook on phone, when sometimes probably you're not delivering as you should.
Does it tweak loyalty? The older generation, older than you guys, whether the pastor is irrelevant, whether he's doing a boring sermon, they are listening in. But the younger guys seem to have options. Is it something to do with generation also?
Well, yes, I do. And I think also to some extent also has to do with the way these people have been brought up. Of course, you could understand, sometimes as human beings, when you're exposed to so many things, you find that you get distracted. And so it is the same kind of a thing that is happening. And so you have then to manage that kind of a distraction. I actually find out like myself, when I want to work, sometimes I have to switch off notifications on my computer and on my phone so that I can be able to concentrate on a certain aspect. And so since there is no way that we are going to do away with this technology, I think for me, what we need to do is accept it, but more importantly, know how to manage it so that it doesn't become a distraction, and especially to our children.
Personal discipline again?
Exactly.
What do we do so we can articulate our mission? How do we use technology to articulate our mission?
A very good question. Now, using technology, the first thing that you have to do is align technology to your mission.
What does that mean?
Now, it means that as an organization, you've got your vision and your mission. And based on that, you've developed your strategic plan. Now, what you do is that you align technology to your vision, to your mission, and to your strategic plan so that technology helps you to achieve. And so technology does not become a distraction. It actually becomes a tool that helps and supports you achieving your mission. And the moment you have something that is supporting and helping you achieve your mission, then it becomes an indispensable tool.
And so, in talking about articulation of our mission, which will be both, of course, outreach and also in-reach, with regard to outreach, we're thinking about evangelism. Tony, could we take away the foot soldiers and replace them with technology? Is that the way to go?
Well,
foot soldiers here will be the evangelists out there, the pastors who are doing church planting, and say, guys, we can use media and people can just access our sermons and on YouTube, and we will be home and dry. Is that the way to go?
Well, I think this is a question that always comes every now and then when technology is introduced, and there's always the fear that technology will replace people. But the reality is that technology can never replace people, because people play a key and important role. It's only that the roles change. Where you would use 100 people to do a certain thing, you're able to employ technology that is able to do whatever they were doing faster and probably more accurately.
Where do you take these 100 people?
Now, these 100 people start...
Laid off, redundant?
No, not really. Now, these 100 people, they start now doing other things that now require human beings. Now, what is it that require human beings? Things that have to do with emotions, things that have to do with feelings, things that have to do with, touching the human being. That is where technology oftentimes cannot play a role. For example, some institutions that are doing very well, what they have done is that they have incorporated what we call, extracurricular in their courses. A child learn how to play a guitar. They learn how to sing, and they learn how to do those soft skills. Because if you're going towards being analytical and being critical in your thinking, one of the most important things that you need to do is have a relaxed mind. Because you can never be creative, you can never be analytical if you have got stress and if you have got those things. So you see now what will happen here. If you introduce those extracurricular kind of activities, they help you to relax, and then you become more creative. And so the point that I'm trying to make here is that technology then cannot replace people in that regard. So in this case, for example, the exact case that you've asked about pastors, what then you're able to do is that pastors can now be able to have more time to reach out to people, to talk to them and counsel them based on the challenges that they could be going through. So the message per se, they could be able to listen through YouTube.
Right.
They could be able to read through WhatsApp. But now the pastor will come in as a counselor, and now we'll have more time. But you realize that if you don't have technology, then the pastor will be the one to go out first and give people the information and preach the gospel, and probably doesn't have now the time to talk to people. And I think talking is really what matters for people.
Let me ask something that is worrying some of us in the pastoral ministry, which is that worship and music has been hypotonized. And we have music that is causing a lot of... we no longer know which is sacred music and what is secular music. In fact, gross-tech music.
Now,
because of technology.
I must first accept that I'm not an expert in that area. And I just would like probably just to focus on the use of technology, yes, in this regard.
That's all I want.
Yes. And what I would like to say is that today's human being and people, they are grossly affected by the world we live in. When you get into a vehicle, transport, public transport, the music that you get there, when you watch the TV, the kind of talk and also the music that you're exposed to, our nerves and our senses are getting accustomed to a style, that is a bit different than what we expect in the church. And this is a challenge that the church has to deal with. A situation where how do we strike the balance between being moderate and temperate and being on the extreme end? And for me, I'm reminded by the spirit, the fruits of the spirit, and one of them being self-control. And self-control is basically being able to abstain from that which is harmful and being temperate from that which is good. In this case, even when music would be a good thing, when you overdo it, you actually are not having self-control. And in fact, you do not have the fruit of the Spirit. And so, as a church, people have to be conscious about it, that you do not overdo something that even if it's good, when you overdo it, then it becomes bad.
Now, for churches that are mainstream, that have policy, they have institutional capacity, they have the human capital to do the whole regulatory framework, that would be an easy shot. But I'm just thinking of the smaller ministries that may not have that. I'm thinking of the nascent stages of even the mainline churches that are still growing like ministries. How do we help? Can you be a consultant? I'm using it generically, really. Can you be a consultant to caution them that the use of technology can be both bad and good?
Yes, indeed. And the reason why, again, technology, in my view, is usually viewed, from the negative side, is when there is no framework that is guiding the use of technology. In this case, when even if it's a small ministry, just having a few paragraphs that basically describe how technology will be used in that ministry helps a lot towards streamlining how technology will be used, and also to streamline the negative effect of technology when it could be misused by a few people. And so I think that sometimes we suffer because we are not willing to spend a few hours to write down some guidelines and a policy that guides us. I have seen in so many instances where many of us, even at a personal life, we are not willing to probably wake up 30 minutes earlier and plan our day so that our day then becomes successful. So that I know that I need to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things. And I'm able to follow those things, and at the end of the day, I'll be happy that I've been able to achieve something. And so it's the same thing with small ministries. I mean, spending a few minutes writing down, if you don't have money to type, you could still have it handwritten, but at least you have a guideline and a policy that can be applied in regards to the use of technology, like, for example, social media, or even how you use it in your ministry. I think it's extremely important that we have some guidelines that help all ministries.
Could there be a challenge of human capital in such small ministries?
Oh, yes.
They cannot employ, they don't even know, they have no capacity for such consultancy?
Yes. I think, of course, there could be some challenges in terms of human capacity, but I would like to say that, of course, today we've got many education institutions, and I would like to say that one is spoiled for choice. And again, for me, I look education as an investment. Sometimes you have to invest in a few people that you're working with so that they can be able to have that capacity to either develop, let's say, for example, a guideline or a policy that can help towards ICT, or even building their own ICT capacity so that they can add value to your organization. So here I think that organizations need to invest in education and capacity building for their workers and the people that they work with.
Let me ask something here. When I look at the corporate world, the uptake of technology or information or knowledge per se is much, much higher than, of course, the government, except that the government is a huge consumer. But the church is really lagging behind. Why is that so?
I think the way I've looked at church and the way things are done in church.
Is my observation
Yes.
on?
Yes, it is. And I'm saying the way I look at church and the way things in most cases are done in church, oftentimes we do not have, what can I say, the kind of a street target system that you have in corporate world, whereby you are required to deliver. You've got targets that you have to deliver. And so sometimes you find that in church, a lot of times many things depend on people volunteering, on people going the extra mile. Of course, actually, we expect that actually the church should lead, because when you do things because you're motivated, not because someone is watching you and has given you targets, you should be able to achieve better. But again, I personally don't know why we are not doing very well, because we should be doing quite well. But I think for me is the fact that in the corporate world, people have got very strict targets that they have to achieve, and therefore they have got no option. But I think in church, sometimes you find someone may not be able to be strict, because, you know, even if they don't do it, no one really will question them.
How do we put in place some incentive? For Christian behavior, the incentive is always eternal life. That whatever happens now, I'll be in heaven. That's a good incentive by Jesus himself to us to do his bidding. But do we then take away the fact that we are working in a real world, that we need a bit of corporate mentality to achieve targets? Then we can use technology to create efficiency and get those results.
Well, I think that would work well. For me, I think that there are some things that we could learn from the corporate world. But then again, for me, again, I wouldn't want, at a personal level, I wouldn't want a situation where in church we adopt some other aspects of the corporate world. Because just like what you've said, I would feel more motivated when I know that I'm working for God and my reward is going to come from God, rather than just, you know, a small incentive. But then again, as you've said, as a human being, sometimes you need that incentive because, well, things are real. Probably you need to clothe well, you need to feed your family and all that. So sometimes when you have some good incentive, definitely they play a role in helping people. Sometimes actually you don't even need material things. It's just a question of telling someone thank you and appreciating what they are doing.
Are there some things you want to warn the church community with regard to technology against?
Well, personally, what I would like to tell people is that technology is good, but everything depends on how you use it. And just like what I've talked about, the issue of self-control having two faces, that of discipline and that of temperament. Even when technology is good, if it's not used in a temperate way, it could be harmful. We've seen situations where someone, uses, like, for example, their phone. They are on WhatsApp throughout. They have got no time for the family. They have got no time for kids. We've seen situations where, some people are not able to deliver at work simply because they are, using technology and that kind of a thing. And also we've seen where technology is used for bad things like terror and also, spying on someone. So we've got those issues. But for me, when you understand technology and then you become temperate about it, you exercise temperament so that you do not overdo it. You are able to exercise that self-control so that you do not go beyond and you end up hurting probably the people or even your work, or you start having negative aspects of using technology.
Well, that is Tony Kamau from the University of Eastern Africa, Baraton. He's the ICT manager. He says that we need to teach people to analyze information. He also says that we need personal temperament with regard to information. And I can't thank him enough for this narrative he's given us this hour. This is all happening on Hope Channel Kenya, on the talk show, your favorite, Thinking Cup, where we host this kind of people, bring them to you so they can help you and inspire you to think and use information for the right cause. This has been Thinking Cup.